presentation, and to do the honor, ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely excited to have Dr. Ruma Chakrabarty, Head Urban Pre-Sales from ESRI India, to be here with us. Zordar taaliyon ke saath, let's welcome this beautiful lady here with us. Zordar taaliyon, come on everybody, put your hands together.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are proceeding towards lunch hour and seems hungry. I think I will keep you in tune. I will try try the best to keep you in tune towards this topic, which is our concern of today. But before that, I represent Esri India. Esri is a global technology leader in geospatial world. Right. So, we are, as I mentioned, we are a global leader in GIS, and 30% of our revenue goes into different types of R&D features. And so our technology is used by the majority of the government survey organization, whether it is Survey of India, NATMO, GSI, FSI, to name a few, and majority of the ministries also, as well as in NIC also, they use this platform for different types of analysis. We are supporting for the digital Bharat for the entire country. So one of the topic today, which is relevant to most of us, so it is building digitally resilient smart cities of tomorrow. So this is a topic whereby I am presenting a framework that how resilient cities can be made. Now, why this is important? Many of the speakers have mentioned that climate change is a problem. We have seen disasters. We have seen Uttaranchal subsiding down. We have seen that there are floods every now and then. There are landslide incidents. And so, it is high time that we talks about building resilient city. Now, the need is that disaster is inevitable. So, whether we are looking into it or not looking into it, disaster is going to happen. It causes an urban stress factor. And we all know that every day we are adding up more and more people in urban. Most of the urbanization is happening in developing countries. India is one of the foremost countries where urbanization is happening. That competing demands from land, green area, space, city resources, drinking water, housing, pressure on infrastructure, and all this are causing the strain over the nature. The concentration leads to crowding, traffic congestion, littering, air pollution, non-conforming users. On top of this, the emerging disaster of climate change will further multiply the hazards. And according to World Bank estimates, the climate change damage will amount to $314 by the year 2030. So it's a great caution to us. And so we are talking about this topic today, building resilient cities. So why cities are very vulnerable? Because we can see this in the triangle, that there is a high density of population, and population putting up pressure on every bloody things on the, from infrastructure to nature, to drinking water, to climate, to natural resources, everything. We have still lack of regulatory spending. All of us knows that there are building codes, building bylaws are there. But are we implementing those things? There are zonal regulations. Are we implementing those things? No, we are very loose in regulatory reforms. Ignorance and behavior of human, how that is impacting? Because it is a human tendency to think that कि जो उसके साथ हुआ वो मेरे साथ नहीं होगा, मेरा घर नहीं बहने वाला, मैं तो होटल एकदम स्लोप पे ही बनाऊंगा, लेक व्यू, हिल व्यू. Nobody thinks that yes, there can be heavy rainfall and the landslide may happen and it can kill many people. We don't think because that is our behavior. and that caused the urban vulnerability for the disasters. So when we try to define the things, there is a definite linkage between different parameters inside a city. So it calls for urban systems. There are different functions inside the city. City is a complex entity where there are traffic, where there are environmental functions, where there are housing related functions. There are different functions. Then disaster probability in cities. There are certain natural disasters, there are certain man-made disaster probability. We need to assess what are the impacts of these disasters on the life of people, on the property of the city, on the natural infrastructure of the cities. Vulnerability analysis in the terms of people and assets which are vulnerable to different type of disaster parameters. And current response mechanisms, social group response infrastructure, and what are the methods to tackle these problems. And all through, GIS provides a foundation technology for doing this type of research analysis in terms of disaster. So if I talk about how GIS can become a technology for urban resiliency, we work in city system for municipal assets and property. There are town planning norms, and disaster preparedness resource inventory. So that is inside the city system. In institutions, we have people, the zonal officer, ward officer, health, police, fire departments, NGOs, and self-help groups, because they play the grassroots level institutional balance for resiliency of cities and vulnerability aspects in terms of hazard, demographic vulnerability, and sectoral vulnerability. As I mentioned, there are different hazards which are natural and which are man-made. When we talk about the resiliency aspect, there are certain behavioral aspects also. Current urban stress. There has been time, look at our parents' time. They used to have time for their kids. They used to visit people in the family. Now that trend has vanished because we are living in the age of stress. We are getting more and more advanced in technology. We are getting everything, but still we have stress. There are high rate of suicides. Poverty is still a stress for the human being. So, and man-made hazards like fire. Fire has become a very regular, if you look into the newspaper and if you keep a track of every day, you can see that in every city, each day there is some fire incident. It can be in industrial buildings, it can be in residential buildings, but this is an emergency things. Incidents, accidents, riots, terrorist attacks have become very common. Industrial incidents are also there. Natural hazards, of course, we know, and we are also aware that climate change is going to give sleepless nights to administrators. Now, when we are doing the vulnerability assessment for any particular city, because we have to be prepared for tomorrow. So, there are vulnerable groups, there are vulnerable assets, which are the direct factors and exposure to hazards. Then there are indirect factors, which are vulnerable sectors and complete urban system as such. And we have to address in terms of existing capacities to understand the vulnerability. So if we say that flooding is a problem, so it is not only the climate change, but we are paying for what we have done. Every city has a history of encroaching the drainage networks. So we have encroached our drains, we have built upon that, and today we are shouting that the cities are waterlogged and there is a lot of flooding. So all these parameters need to be taken. We have to address as per the capacities the cities are having for this. These are few of the examples that how GIS technology can help in identifying the vulnerabilities of disaster for a particular city. So this is an example of San Antonio. So it shows that how in the flooding zone, which are the assets. And when we identify, these assets can be in terms of properties, these assets can be in terms of roads, it can be railway lines, it can be water pipelines, all those assets which are getting inundated when there is a flood. And how that helps? It helps in two ways. It can identify assets in flood zone and planning for their safety through physical measures. Okay, flood is going to come. Every year it is going to come. Severity will increase, but let's get prepared through physical measures, as well as there are certain measures which should give confidence to people, and that can come when we do that flood insurance. So these are the areas where we can promote that, okay, flood insurance can be taken up. So that is how GIS help you in preparing for the disasters. Another thing, you can see in the left that assets along the fault line and sectoral level planning is important when we are talking about GIS-based vulnerability assessment. So fault line and all the properties, all the assets around it. In India also we have the detailed fault line for the entire country. For every city they need to look into which are the assets which are built around it, which are the properties which are built around it, which are the vulnerable population which are living around it. And then we can do different level of analysis for infrastructure. Like for water supply, we can see that if the diameter of pipelines are small, then what is the vulnerability of that in event of earthquake or in the event of flood? It can be for medium diameter and it can be for larger diameter of pipelines. That what type of vulnerability is there in terms of sectors? Landslide area. We know that in areas, especially in Western Ghats areas or in Uttarkashi areas or those hilly areas, landslide is a common phenomenon. Through historical knowledge, we can analyze that which areas are susceptible to such type of landslides and how many people have got impacted because of that. So we can plan accordingly. And let me tell you, in Mumbai, when they have done this analysis, that most of the slums are located near to the susceptible areas of landslide, because those areas are left abandoned and poor people, due to lack of cheaper housing, they build their slums along those areas which are not fit fit in terms of disasters or not fit for habitations. As I mentioned, fire susceptibility. So we can see inside our cities that which are the areas which are susceptible to fire. Several types of GIS-oriented development can take place in terms of fire susceptibility, in terms of mapping the density, in terms of measuring the heights of buildings which are beyond the reach of the ladders of fire station, and we can analyze that, okay, these buildings need to compulsorily take the fire NOCs. You are all aware that recently a rule has been passed that all the coaching centers in Mukherjee Nagar has to take the fire NOC for starting up the coaching center. That type of regulations is necessary to protect the people in the vulnerable systems. And we can also do the hotspot analysis based on the incidents of fire, which are the market areas where the fire incidents takes place, which are the areas in the city where the fire incident take place. So city resiliency, now I come to the city resiliency strategy, which provides what are the probability of disaster, what are the existing norms of planning, regional economic development aspects, and then we can have disaster resilient visions and data models. So this GIS need to adopt the data models that which are the susceptible disasters, which are the possible disasters, and then we have to find out that how it is going to impact the people, where in which part of city they are going to impact the people, sectoral assessment that which sectors are going to be harmed, scenario planning exercise. GIS provides you a potential through scenario planning of different types. So if we build barricades along the landslide prone area, how it is going to impact, how it is going to stop the land from coming down all of a sudden. So that type of scenario planning can be done using the geospatial technologies. And finally, we can develop a city or sector-wise adaptation options and action plans. This is the sectoral assessment. So we need to identify which are the critical sectors in terms of water and basic services. The basic services, especially water facilities, which are going to get impacted because of flood, because of earthquakes. Transport facilities, every now and then we see that either because of flood or because of any type of earthquake, our roads are broken, our networks are broken. Land and housing. How many housing are built on the hillside? Shimla, Uttaranchal, all these hill towns. Joshimath, which is because of the burden it is sinking. So that type of assessment need to be taken care. Electricity and energy, because that is essential infrastructure which is going to get impacted because of disaster. Industry and economy, which industries are there which are going to get impacted because of the disaster and how it is going to impact the economy of the city. So this is the critical sectoral assessment model. And this is the last slide, which totally talks about a GIS-based framework for resilient city, where we go by the preparedness. Preparedness is the best solution for addressing any type of disaster. So we need to do it in terms of resource inventory that is available in the cities, which are the hospitals, which are the where the police stations are there, fire brigades are there. So that is on terms of one type of inventory. Then where the earth removers are. So because in disaster we have to first remove the malba. So that type of earth removers are there, other machineries are there, cranes are there. So we need to identify each and every resource to be prepared for any type of disaster. Now, it does not mean that we are talking about always in a negative factor that something is going. We are just getting prepared. We are preparing ourselves so that disaster don't impact us. Logistic planning, stockpiling, evacuation planning. So whichever is the hazardous areas in terms of fire, we need to see how the people will be evacuated. Need assessment for that. Prediction and warning, monitoring using sensors. So today we know that in cyclones, we have seen during the Biparjoy that the sensor-based warning has been provided to people and we have almost zero loss of life. So this sensor technology need to be integrated on geospatial platform for giving these types of warning for any type of disasters. Forecasting, scenario-based identification based on the historical data. Then we have the response mechanism. We can have the situational analysis, the crisis maps that can happen in information and communication. We have given a lot of stress that information and communication need to be processed. So while we are doing the preparedness, we need to see that when disaster is there, what are the information and communication means which are available to us to address that or to spread the awareness. Dispatching the resources. Identifying the NGOs at the grassroots level who will reach the people, the first come first basis, they will reach to the people to address that, and damage assessment of every type. Then we talks about relief, the search and rescue measures, the debris removal, as I told, that is the most important thing when disaster strikes. The logistics, where during the disaster all your roads and everything has been broken up. So you need to find out which are the alternate route of reaching to these people. Delivery of relief supplies, where to make the shelters, how to reach the food, how to give safe drinking water. Action prioritization, rehabilitation. So rehabilitation of these people also would need a lot of spatial aspect in terms of how spatially infrastructure can be brought. Livelihood and social security can be provided, and prevention. For prevention, we have further structural assessment, non-structural measures, hazard analysis need to be taken up. So that's for the framework. Esri India is already doing a lot of work internationally for this. The platform has its own capability to support different types of sensors and means to integrate the data and do this type of analysis. And these are the spatial layers which are required for this type of planning. Finally, let's be prepared, and disaster is inevitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to request you to please come here in the center. और साथ ही साथ request करना चाहूँगी to Mr. Nikunj Sharma to please step on the stage and felicitate the lady. Everybody, please give it up for the beautiful young lady standing here for sharing all the wonderful knowledge.